Have you ever craved a food you can't find anywhere anymore? In America, so many snacks, candies, ice creams, and sandwiches were once a part of everyday life, a taste of childhood for millions. But over the years, they vanished from the shelves, retired, discontinued, and gone for good. Today, we're taking a trip down memory lane to revisit the most unforgettable, discontinued foods in American history. The ones people still talk about, still miss, and secretly wish would make a comeback. Let's dive in. Altoids Sour. If you grew up in the early 2000s, you might remember a little round tin that could make your whole face pucker up in an instant. Altoids Sour. These weren't just candies. They were a dare, a challenge, a badge of honor among friends. Apple, lime, mango, raspberry, tangerine. Each one hit your tongue with a sharp, electric jolt that was equal parts pain and pleasure. Kids would gather around, passing the tin, daring each other to take one more. For a brief moment in 2004, they were everywhere, in backpacks, lockers, glove compartments. But as quickly as they arrived, they disappeared. By 2010, falling sales sealed their fate, and the tins vanished from shelves. Still, for those who tasted them, Altoids Sour isn't just candy. It's a flashback to a time when being the kid who could handle the sour meant everything. O. Henry. Do you remember unwrapping an O. Henry bar? That sweet mix of roasted peanuts, chewy caramel, and that little fudgy bite all wrapped in smooth milk chocolate. It wasn't just candy, it was comfort, tucked inside a twin bar you could share, or keep all to yourself. For nearly a century, O. Henry was part of the American candy aisle, a little taste of tradition passed from generation to generation. And then, almost quietly, it disappeared in 2019, just months before turning 100 years old. You can still find a version of it in Canada, but those who grew up with the original know it doesn't quite taste the same. It's more than chocolate that's gone. It's a piece of childhood, a flavor tied to ball games, after-school snacks, and simple joys we'll never quite get back. Screaming yellow Zonkers. Back in 1969, something bright and quirky popped onto store shelves. Screaming yellow Zonkers. At first glance, it was just popcorn, coated in a golden sugar glaze. But it wasn't just about the taste. It was the whole experience. The box was filled with silly jokes, playful cartoons, and artwork that made you laugh before you even opened it. Kids loved the sweetness, parents smiled at the humor, and suddenly a simple snack became a little piece of pop culture. For decades, Zonkers weren't just food. They were fun, a lighthearted break in a busy day. But in 2007, they disappeared quietly, leaving only memories of sticky fingers, bright yellow popcorn, and the kind of carefree joy that feels harder to find today. If you ever had a box, you know, it wasn't just popcorn, it was happiness in a handful. Rice Krispies Treats cereal. In the early 90s, mornings had a kind of magic to them. And for many kids, that magic came in a bright blue box of Rice Krispies Treats cereal. Imagine the gooey sweetness of marshmallows and butter, the crunch of puffed rice, all packed into bite-sized clusters floating in a bowl of milk. For children of the 90s, it wasn't just breakfast, it was joy at the start of the day. Parents may have raised an eyebrow at the sugar, but kids, they couldn't get enough. Even today, petitions still pop up online, begging for its return. Proof of just how deeply it's stuck in our memories. But in 2020, the cereal disappeared for good. A casualty of changing times and stricter nutrition standards. Still, for anyone who ever started their morning with that sweet crunch, the memory lingers like the last sip of sugary milk at the bottom of the bowl. McDonald's McLobster. Back in the early 90s, McDonald's tried something that felt almost too good to be true. The McLobster. Picture this: a soft roll stuffed with chunks of sweet lobster, lightly dressed, and served at a price that made it possible for just about anyone to enjoy a taste of New England's summer tradition. For many families, it was the closest thing to a seaside treat without ever leaving town. Kids sat in red booths, parents unwrapped the rolls, and for a brief moment, McDonald's felt like a coastal shack. But as lobster prices climbed, the dream couldn't last. The McLobster slowly slipped away, making rare appearances before vanishing from the menu altogether. Still, for those who remember, it wasn't just fast food. It was a little bite of luxury wrapped in Golden Arches nostalgia. Fruit Stripe. Some candies weren't just about the taste. They were about the fun that came with them. Fruit Stripe gum was one of those treasures. First hitting shelves in the 1960s, it came wrapped in bright rainbow stripes, with Zipes the zebra grinning back at you. The flavor hit hard, bold, juicy, sweet, even if it faded faster than you wanted it to. Kids would pop piece after piece, trading sticks at school, showing off the temporary tattoos that came inside every pack. It wasn't just gum. It was a tiny ritual of childhood. And though it was only recently discontinued in 2024, it feels like a whole era disappeared with it. For anyone who ever unwrapped those stripes, the memory is still vivid, like a flash of color that never quite fades. Alpha-Bits cereal. Few cereals made breakfast feel like playtime the way Alpha-Bits did. Introduced in 1957, each spoonful wasn't just sweet, frosted crunch. It was a jumble of letters that turned the kitchen table into a little classroom of imagination. Kids spelled their names, left silly messages, or just searched for that perfect combination before the pieces sank into the milk. Parents loved that it kept little ones busy, and kids loved that it tasted like childhood. Over the years, the recipe changed, disappeared, then came back again, only to vanish once more in 2021. Fans never stopped asking for its return, and now, like an old friend coming home, Alpha-Bits is set for a limited release in fall 2025. For anyone who grew up fishing letters out of a cereal bowl, it's a chance to relive mornings that felt a little more magical. Hershey's Kissables. Some candies seemed destined to be classics the moment they appeared. Hershey's Kissables, launched in 2005, felt like that kind of treat. They took the familiar charm of a Hershey's Kiss and wrapped it in a colorful candy shell. Reds, greens, blues, and oranges that poured out of the bag like confetti. Kids loved them because they were bite-sized and fun, perfect for sharing or sneaking into lunchboxes. Holidays brought special colors, adding to the excitement, like little edible ornaments. But just a few years later, changes in the recipe dulled the magic, and by 2009, they disappeared from shelves. For those who remember, though, Kissables were more than just candy. They were tiny bursts of sweetness that briefly turned an ordinary day into something a little more colorful. Wonka Bars. Few candies carried as much magic in their name as the Wonka Bar. Born from the pages of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and brought to life in 1976, it felt like unwrapping a piece of childhood fantasy. In the US, the bars had a simple but irresistible charm. Chocolate wrapped around crunchy bits of graham cracker, the kind of treat that made you wonder if a golden ticket might just be hiding inside. In Europe, special editions tied to the 2005 movie gave fans a taste of Roald Dahl's imagination, if only for a moment. But by 2012, the bars vanished from shelves, leaving behind more than just empty wrappers. For generations who grew up believing in a little chocolate magic, the memory of a Wonka bar is like a sweet daydream you can't quite touch anymore. Klondike Choco Taco. Some desserts weren't just about taste. They were about the pure joy of discovery. The Klondike Choco Taco, first introduced in 1983, was one of those treats that felt instantly special. Imagine a crispy waffle cone, folded like a taco, cradling vanilla ice cream swirled with ribbons of chocolate syrup, then dipped in a shell of chocolate and sprinkled with nuts. You could find it in the freezer aisle, hear its name shouted from an ice cream truck, or even order one at Taco Bell after a meal. For decades, it was the kind of dessert that made summer afternoons unforgettable. When it was discontinued in 2022, fans across generations mourned the loss. Because for many, the Choco Taco wasn't just ice cream. It was a little piece of happiness you could hold in your hand. Pop-Tarts Pastry Swirls. In the late 90s, mornings felt just a little brighter when Pop-Tarts Pastry Swirls were on the table. Unlike the classic Pop-Tart, these had a soft, fluffy crust that unraveled into layers, with sweet filling tucked inside and frosting drizzled across the top. Apple cinnamon brought the comfort of a warm bakery, while cheese Danish felt like a little indulgence before school or work. They didn't last long, only a few short years before disappearing in the early 2000s. But for those who remember, opening that shiny foil packet was a small moment of joy. Pastry swirls were more than breakfast. They were a cozy bite of the 90s, the kind of treat that made an ordinary morning feel a little more special. Doritos 3D. In the late 90s, snack time got a bold new twist with Doritos 3D. Imagine your favorite triangular chips, puffed into little crunchy pillows, bursting with flavors like nacho cheesier, zesty ranch, and jalapeno cheddar. Kids tore open the bags after school, or sometimes carried the tall tubes around like prized treasures, pouring them out one by one to share with friends. They had that playful crunch, lighter, airier, but still packed with the punch of Doritos seasoning. By 2004, they disappeared from shelves in the US, living on only in memory and in Mexico. When they returned in 2020, fans were thrilled, but many swore the originals just had something special, a taste that instantly took you back to afternoons in the 90s, sitting cross-legged on the floor with friends, fingers coated in orange dust. Muna for Rally. Do you remember the Rally bar? For kids growing up in the 1970s, it wasn't just candy. It was a little piece of joy you could hold in your hand. Packed with caramel, rich fudge, and crunchy peanuts, all wrapped in smooth milk chocolate, it was so full of flavor they called it the crowded candy bar. And yet back then, it only cost 15 cents. For many, it was the sweet reward after mowing a lawn, riding bikes until sunset, or saving up spare change from a paper route. Though the Rally bar disappeared from shelves long ago, its memory still lingers, a taste of a simpler time, when life felt just a little sweeter. KFC Double Down. Back in 2010, the world did a double take when KFC introduced something so outrageous it almost felt like a dare: the Double Down. Instead of buns, there were two golden pieces of fried chicken, holding together layers of bacon, melted cheese, and sauce. For some, it was pure indulgence. For others, just morbid curiosity. But everyone had an opinion. It wasn't just a meal. It became a cultural moment, sparking debates at lunch tables and even making the evening news. The Double Down would come and go, never staying for long, but always returning with the same excitement. And even today, people remember that first bite, messy, bold, and unforgettable, a reminder of how even food can capture the spirit of its time. Ben & Jerry's Wavy Gravy. Do you remember Ben & Jerry's Wavy Gravy? First scooped in the early 90s, it was the kind of flavor that felt almost too good to be true. Caramel blended with cashews and Brazil nuts, swirled with chocolate, fudge, and hazelnut ribbons. Every spoonful was rich, unexpected, and a little magical. For nearly a decade, it was a favorite, until it disappeared into Ben & Jerry's famous flavor graveyard in Vermont. Fans loved it so much they even voted it back for a short revival in 2005. And still today, people ask for its return, remembering not just the taste, but the joy of discovering something so playful and indulgent. Wavy gravy wasn't just ice cream. It was a moment in time, frozen in memory. Butterfinger BBs. Back in the 90s, Butterfinger BBs were the kind of snack that felt like pure fun. Instead of the big candy bar, you got these bite-sized little spheres, crunchy, peanut buttery centers wrapped in smooth chocolate, perfect for tossing into your mouth by the handful. And if you grew up watching The Simpsons, you probably remember Bart himself shouting about how nobody better lay a finger on his Butterfinger. Those commercials made the BBs feel like the candy of the decade. But by 2006, they quietly disappeared from store shelves, leaving fans with nothing but sweet memories. To this day, people still talk about them, not just for the taste, but for the way they captured a playful moment in time when even candy felt like a piece of pop culture. Tato Skins. In the mid-'80s, snack time had a little extra magic thanks to Keebler's Tato Skins. These weren't just ordinary chips. They captured the best of a baked potato, both the crispy skin and the fluffy inside, baked into every bite. Launched in 1985, they became a household favorite all through the 80s and 90s, the kind of snack you'd find on the coffee table during family movie nights or packed into school lunches. There was something hearty and comforting about them, a flavor that felt familiar yet special. By the early 2000s, they disappeared from shelves, leaving many to miss that one-of-a-kind taste. But the story didn't quite end there. If you head to TGI Fridays, you can still find them today under the name Tato Skins. A little reminder that some flavors never fully fade away. Crunch Tators. If you grew up in the 90s, you probably remember the unforgettable bite of Crunch Tators. These weren't just chips. They were louder, crispier, and somehow more fun than anything else in the snack aisle. Kids loved tearing into a bag after school, that satisfying crunch echoing like a little celebration in every bite. Their cameo in the holiday classic Home Alone only cemented their place in pop culture, making them feel like the snack of the moment. By the end of the decade, though, they quietly disappeared, leaving behind only memories of that bold, shattering crunch. But in 2024, for a brief, shining moment, they came back, and biting into them again felt like being instantly transported to a simpler, joyful time. Pizzarias pizza chips. Back in the early 90s, there was one snack that truly tasted like magic in a bag: Keebler's Pizzarias pizza chips. Made from real pizza dough and bursting with flavor, they came in cheese pizza, pizza supreme, and zesty pepperoni. The texture was thick and crunchy, almost like biting into a mini slice of pizza that had been baked into a chip. Kids would tear through entire bags during after-school hangouts, while parents snuck a few bites too, pretending it was just for the kids. Their launch in 1991 was nothing short of legendary, the most successful snack debut Keebler ever had. But like so many treasures of the 90s, they quietly vanished by the end of the decade. Even today, people remember that unmistakable taste, wishing they could rip open just one more bag. Burger King Italian Original Chicken Sandwich. In the 1980s, Burger King introduced something that felt almost gourmet for fast food: the Italian Original Chicken Sandwich. Imagine a crispy, breaded chicken fillet, topped with tangy marinara sauce and melted mozzarella, all tucked into a sesame seed bun. It was like a chicken parm made drive-through friendly, and people fell in love instantly. For years, it was the kind of sandwich that made a quick meal feel just a little special. When it briefly returned in 2021, fans rushed back for a taste, hoping it would stay. But just like before, it disappeared all too soon. Today, it lives on in memory, a reminder of when fast food wasn't just convenient, but surprisingly comforting. Jell-O Pudding Pops. Back in the 1970s through the 1990s, no freezer felt complete without a box of Jell-O Pudding Pops. They weren't just frozen treats. They were creamy, silky bites of pudding on a stick, the kind of snack that made hot summer afternoons feel just a little cooler. Kids would rush inside after playing outdoors, peel back the wrapper, and savor that smooth, melt-in-your-mouth sweetness. By the late 90s, they vanished, and though they made a brief return, fans knew the magic just wasn't quite the same. Today, all that's left are memories, and maybe a homemade version with a Jell-O mold. But for so many, the taste of a pudding pop will always be the flavor of childhood. McDonald's Fried Apple Pie. Long before McDonald's switched to baked pies, there was the legendary fried apple pie. Introduced in the 1960s, it came out of the box piping hot, with a golden, crispy shell that shattered at the first bite, giving way to sweet, gooey apple filling. For many, it was the perfect little indulgence, the kind of treat you'd grab with a burger and fries and savor on the ride home. By the early 90s, the fried version disappeared from most menus, replaced with a healthier baked pie. But ask anyone who grew up with it, and they'll tell you, nothing has ever quite compared. And if you're lucky enough to be in Hawaii, or at the McDonald's in Downey, California, you can still taste that bit of fried nostalgia. From candy and chips to fast food, pastries and ice cream, these were the flavors that defined a generation, and the ones Americans still miss the most. But what about you? Which snack or treat do you still think about, long after it disappeared from the shelves? And if you could bring just one of them back, what would it be? Share your memories in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more nostalgic bites of the past.